glad to be here. Back to Bombay, the place where I've done so much work. I've worked extensively with MuseLab, and there's a lot of love that we've received in terms of the work that we've done, and it's been instrumental in defining the journey that we've had. So I'll start with the work and the presentation. So when it came to us, as the context of the presentation, when it was stated that it's going to be about parallels, we were like, it's interesting. I think this is what we'd been doing. I have a bachelor's degree in architecture. I even have a master's in architecture. And today, what I'm doing is nothing architecture really, but then it's the amount of influences that it has in my work today. That is what has started to define the vocabulary, typology, or even just setting goals in terms of what we want to do and what we want to build as a company. So architecture is always sort of looming in the backdrop, and we are playing around in the parallels of it, trying to figure out and defining or innovating as we move forward. So as I said, that architecture, architect is what I am by education, and there was a lot of joy in architecture. Like if anybody asked me 10 years back, am I happy where I am? Am I happy doing what I do? I would be like, I absolutely love it. Why? Because the profession really gave me it was a platform where you could talk about people perceptions and sort of translate them, add your imagination, add your creativity, be technical, be analytical, just everything, like like a whole holistic purview of doing things, and bringing it together and sort of creating buildings, creating spaces. And the best part of it, it was not on paper, but it was really like out there. So we were designing, we were always talking to people, we were introspecting, and we were building these beautiful spaces. So that was a beautiful thing about architecture. And plus, what I enjoyed the most is when we were talking about materials and when we were talking about scale. So it was interesting because I always thought that a material has its own language. It tells you what it wants to become. And that was what was interesting for me. Say, a brick building is a certain typology, a concrete building is another typology. So material defines what you're doing eventually. And for me, the love of material is what sort of uh, the moment we figured out the moment we had a first foot into the world of Kane and Rattan, that's where I'm like, hey, you know what, like there is something here for me to play with, and this is a commitment that I can make. More than about creating objects, creating geometry, it was saying that, hey, can I commit to this thing? It's almost like a relationship. And today, if I look back at it, I'm like, it's almost like cheating on architecture and moving on with a love affair and saying that, hey, I'll move to a specific material and I move forward to making products and objects and installations. So during my practice in architecture, I think like in the next slides, I'm going to be talking about conflict, as like how conflict is something that defines you in life. But to cater to that, I was constantly doing other things. I really wanted to um, set up a 3D printing based company where I thought that, it's technology, it's futuristic, and there is a lot of potential, and especially potential in terms of making and manufacturing things. So this is the first company that I set up 2016. It was a 3D printed jewelry series, and I thought that from jewelry I'll move to product and spaces. Another ambitious project was this sensor-based installation where I thought that, we are at the juncture of technology where can I talk about sensor-driven objects, sensor-driven, say, can I talk about a smart building where the surfaces, facades are moving and changing and shifting based upon the wind direction and the sunlight. And with that as a primary thought, I started working on the idea of electronic-based components and wanted to figure out, can there be something done about it? So this is me 8 to 9 years back, where as an architect, my goal was that I wanted to do innovate, like I wanted to work towards innovation in design. And all I could think of is that if you have to talk about innovation, you need to talk about technology. And the technology would be either it's data driven, either it's sensor driven, and or it could even be driven by, let's say, today we're talking about 3D printed buildings, really. But I wanted to maybe do it then, and I realized that I was thinking a little ahead of time to be able to really figure it out. So, during my journey, conflict is something that's been like I like living in a state of perpetual mental conflict. Why? Because like these are different conflicts that I had regarding my work and my practice. But I feel that if you're not conflicted in a moment, I think you're not thinking, you're not really introspecting. And to be, if you're not introspecting, which means there's that sense and state of steadiness. And I don't know, I think I feel very uncomfortable being a little too steady. I feel like I'm just lagging behind in life. So during my initial practice years, having studied traditional architectural practice in Lucknow, and then having done my master's in Barcelona, which was around technology for architecture, like I came back to India in 2013. And, with a lot of naivety, with a lot of lack of experience, I was like, you know what? Should practice be about machines, or should it be about craftsmanship? Like I would always see machining practices and craft practices as two separate things, because my master's was in parametric design and complex design, and but my primary education was, during college days, was in sustainability. So I really could not figure out the parallels between the two, and it was always like either this or that. Secondly, like when we talk about a practice, we all know that research is something which is cost heavy on a company versus, just focusing a company where it's only and only about, let's say, doing projects and moving forward. So for me, these were separate things. And secondly, whenever you're talking about design, something newness in design, exploration design, there's always that conflict ki, should it be efficient or should it be abundant? Can I splurge myself into that, exaggeration of design and play with it? So these were always the conflicts, and I think it was good I was conflicted. I think, these conflicts, and I stayed with the conflicts. um, the Another thing is, today I feel that it's okay to have conflict. It's important to summon to that introspection, to seek deeper insight, to find resolution, to and perseverance is important. That you got to stay with it, you got to endure it, you got to understand it. And it's something that doesn't resolve itself through one product design or one project design. It doesn't resolve in 1 week or 1 year. It could take years and years, but I think the journey is beautiful, the journey is nice. So and I think certain certain researches do take that much time. So I feel that like in the world where we are moving really fast in terms of how we look at design, I feel I really want to talk about how can we slow down and believe in the slowness of our processes and our design. Now, this conflict between like slow versus fast design, this is pretty crucial in my work. I'll talk about it, later. If you see, my entire body of work is around this one material. And in my initial days, I was always looking at direction that, how do you talk about setting a product company? How do you talk about setting, typically there are furniture companies, and I'm like, do I aim to be another furniture company doing works in cane and rattan? And how do different companies work also? So typically design, it's a very accessible thing. There's Pinterest. It's very easy to download pictures, very easy to download ideas and build collections around it. So we were always conflicted as to how do we pursue building what we're doing. And somewhere, because my architecture practice was running in the back, I was like, it doesn't have to be this money making machine for me. I am happy to let the material be itself in today and then keep growing. So for us, the intent of slow design was sticking to the material, pushing it from one year to the other. Every single product, every single project was more and more and more complexity. And I would say I've taken 6 years to fully comprehend the material, and I'm happy today where the material is. Can there be more? Yes, there can be more, but today I know I have a grip on it in a very holistic way. So, certain design intentions are fast, certain design intentions are slow, and when it comes to material, when it comes to craft, I think like a slow design perspective is something that we have to be very mindful of. So, as a company, also, if you see, my journey has been very varied where I started. So, there's architecture, there's product, um, there's architecture, there's product design, there's sensor-based designs, there's everything. And today there is something else. And when I started off, I said that, you know what, it's okay, let's give myself 10 years. So the idea of defining the company, the idea of defining design and craft innovation, technically was a 10-year plan. And I think it's already been 10 years when I began to today. And I think there is a consolidation of sorts where we are. So today, moving from architecture company, today I am Wicked Story. I'm the founder of Wicked Story. We are based out of Hyderabad, and it's a product and it's a product design studio in Hyderabad. Plus, we have our own karkhana or a workshop where it's a large space where we have weavers, we have our framing guys, we have carpenters, polishing. So it's a whole ecosystem that we've managed to build in the last 6 years, ever since we manifested Wicked Story. So a little about starting point as to, first 3 to 4 years, I was always questioning myself, like why this material and why do I have to stick to it? Because nobody else was sticking to this material at that point, to any material for that matter, and especially cane and rattan, it was not there. So my starting point happened because if you see, I was trying to play with complex geometry at one point of time. I was trying to work that out with 3D printing. I always realized that people were making grids really, but nobody was able to give surfaces. And this was my starting point where we were supposed to design a product for an exhibition, and around the idea of nostalgia. And the thing that came to mind was Imli or Chintapandu, which is, if you like, I live in South India, and like as a North Indian, we define South Indian food by the tamarind in it. So for me, that aspect was nostalgia. It was always about travel, the people, the warmth from the South. And, I said that I want to do a Imli. And the moment I made it, it's a very simple metal frame on the inside, and then there's a weaving on the top. And I was like, you know what? There's complex geometry. There's a sturdy, robust frame. It's extremely lightweight, and it's absolutely jointless. I'm not worrying about 4 feet by 8 feet as a module size. So there were a lot of good things about it, and plus, the nostalgia was not just in the concept of Imli, but it was also from the material. Cane and rattan happened actually because we said that हर एक के दादाजी के घर में केन की कुर्सियाँ होती हैं. That's precisely how people spoke about cane and rattan work in 2019. And we said that let's play with it, and just it happened, and we built Imbli, and that was the starting point. So one product, there was no understanding of if anybody will ever pay us to do anything in cane and rattan. But I think for the first 2 years, we did get a lot of love. People started to identify, me wherever I would go. They would know my name, they would know the company, but they'll say Imli karke. So it was, just the impact that one design could have, the combination of design and material could have was very interesting for us. And that's what got us to dig a little deeper into weaving as an idea. Like, why do you stick to just weaving? In India, there are a lot of crafts. We are extremely fond of our bidri work. We are fond of our pichwai. There's a lot if you look at the length and breadth of the country. And often the crafts which have been able to define richness, luxury, or premiumness is what have always taken center stage. Now, basketry, for that matter, if you see, basketry is actually, if you see cultures and communities which talk about basketry, basically talk about them as an everyday object. If you see tribes, they live in communities where, in amongst lands where there is bamboo, easy accessibility to bamboo. They do make their mats, their beds, their homes, their partitions, walls, their everyday objects. So it's more than it being a craft of luxury. Basketry has been a craft of everydayness in our lives. Now, craft, it's a, other crafts, if you see, it's a very regional indicator of culture and heritage in a certain region. But if you look at basketry, it's very interesting to see that the north and south to east and west, we have basketry across the country. There are 75 different forms of mat making and basketry, from different regions across the country. And it's one of the most understated craft format, across. But the good thing about it is that because the raw material is so easily accessible and it changes from one geography to the other, it can be easy for basketry and mat making to die, and it is as easy for it to rise back and come back. So I feel that if you're talking about craft and sustenance for the future, but this is where um, it's this is where we can talk about craft that can really grow and sustain, because we are actually in a generation where in every segment that I talk to, people are like, we are just working with the last generation of craft people, that are there, and we really don't know what the next generation is going to be like. So just a couple of references for chatais across the country, basket making across the country. And why did it get me interested was because, as I mentioned earlier, that I wanted to play with complex geometry. So in a very theoretical way, when we talk about complex geometry, it was about, defining it from that the U's and the V's, where the U point and V point sort of move around and sort of construct a surface. And weaving also has, if you define it, it has a warp and a weft. And I just realized that the warp and weft can be manipulated, and that's how you can just work with geometries. So I'll just quickly move past this one, where this is something that I've sort of learned, that if one has to talk about working in craft, as a designer, your work doesn't just end at designing something in craft. I think the whole comprehensiveness needs to be spoken about. There has to be design intervention. There has to be skill upgradation, because we are actually at a tipping point where we really don't know what a craft person in India in the next generation looks like, because it is a sort of like a dying industry. Second thing is market development, because there is craft across the country, but probably it doesn't reach the right markets in the right way. So what we as designers, can we create newer markets? Can we talk about better value proposition? Now, innovation being the core of what we were doing earlier, we realized that if I just look at this one material, and if I talk about tech and different perspectives to how do you talk about innovation, I felt that I was doing all of that even if I was talking about just a very simple, humble ghaspoos. Like cane rattan is actually, like it falls in the ghaspoos category. Like when I get invited to exhibitions where people are working in specific crafts, they're like, isko bhi le aao, thoda ghaspoos ka kaam hai. So, so the I feel that the right working with 3D printing has a lot of potential in how you work with cane and rattan. This is not my work, but I think something we are internally working on. This is a collaboration we did with a brand in Hyderabad. It's called Cancel Plans. So they worked with pharmaceutical waste. These silver strips that you have are actually the waste from medicine package, the medicine packaging. So we worked with them and we created these interesting material palettes where one direction it's rattan and the other direction it's aluminium strips. The other also is how can you make chatais in interesting form, and like this as an exploration for us, we was about manufacturing a chatai in 2D and like a technique of making it in 2D, but then how do you take it to a three-dimensional assembly? And this was interesting because, again, the moment we are working, trying to work globally, we're always talking about flat packing and how to talk about geometry, but in an optimized way for international businesses. So we actually got the Lexus Design Award for this particular project. Lastly, in terms of craft innovation, like as I said, that basketry has always been known as a very everyday object scale. We've always known basketry ki ghar mein chatai rakhi hai ya tokri hai. So for us, because I never understood, I'm not a trained furniture designer. I never understood small scale. So for me, everything was 10 feet, 20 feet, rather 30 feet plus. For me, that was my initial perspective to life. And this was the first time we did a 30 feet by 30 feet installation. So scale became an interesting pivoting point for us in terms of how we perceived the material. Lastly, this slide is here as a manifestation. I'm like, I want to do architecture, the whole idea of basketry. So there's skill. So there are two components to wicker work. Like one is the skill aspect of it and the other is the material aspect of it. Either you can innovate on skill or you can innovate on material. So material innovation is where you can find great applications. And one thing that I want to do is I want to replace the natural material with, let's say, stainless steel weaving or other outdoor friendly material and be able to do architectural scale works which are good for the outdoors. So I'm starting with a couple of my works here. This is a 11 feet by 21 feet wall paneling that we did in 2019. That's Bloom Light from us. Again, this one is a custom commission. We first did like a 12 feet tall cactus. And after we did that, the whole project suddenly revolved around the idea of the cactus because it fit very well. This is a 16 feet by 8 feet tall partition for a space. Again, another custom-made organic bench for one of our clients. This is a 16 feet tall installation in a double height space. So in fact, the hardest thing for me is to design something small. It's taken me 6 years to be able to design like a perfect, nice lampshade or a great chair. And even today, if you see, I don't have a tableware series. Why? Because I can't design and I can't think small. So all of these, in fact, all my larger works were some of my, like this one is again like it's a lockdown project, like a 2020 ka project. So from the initial days of our work, we were already getting into large scale works. And I said that, when you have this one material, it's very easy for somebody to say that, "Arey, humne to 4 दिन पहले देखा है, now we are bored of the company." So we also started pursuing it, saying that yes, there are standard products from us, but then also the value proposition will come if you're giving the right product for the right space. And that again was a game changer for us, because we said that my weaving system is constant, my material system and my skill system is constant. What my customized part is going to be the product that goes out. So we were able to do like some really, really interesting projects and work on interesting briefs. This is a project by MuseLab. People still ask us for this one. These are sculptural curtains we did for a Pan-Asian restaurant in Mumbai. Again, leaf lights. This is a 13 feet long installation that we did for one of the projects in Ahmedabad. This is a 20 feet by 15 feet installation that we did for a Pan-Asian restaurant in Mumbai again. Circling back to this 30 feet by 30 feet installation in concentric way. This project was actually interesting, and I think I undermine the use of technology that we do internally in a process, and I don't talk about it enough. But because we use our in terms of working process, in outside in the industry, there are a lot of people who may be designing, saying that, okay, today, like, here's a design, and just expressing a design intent to a craft person and making it. But something that I am very strict about in my company, that no information to a craft person goes um, as a verbal, saying कि मुझे ये करना है, can you do that for me? Nothing goes like that. Everything is done in 3D, modeled in 3D, comprehended in 3D. Drawings are driven. Specific drawing sets go to the weaving people, from the to the cane work to metal work. So everything is very drawing driven. So this project happened. I was supposed to install it early 2021, and the day the installation was, I actually got down with COVID and I can't move out. I couldn't move out, and the client was really angry that they're like, you know what, Priyanka, I really can't wait for you. I have to get this done. And my team, because there was such comprehensive information set, that we used to sort of do it. My team, especially in fact, like on the ground, we just had two interns and a whole lot of weavers and our craft people, and they were able to pull it off by themselves, without me, without any senior strata from the company. So I can't emphasize enough the idea that um, even if you're working with craft is maybe assumed to be like a very disorganized sector, but really good can come if it's the way we pursue our architectural sites, which are very drawing and information centric. If craft is also pursued that way, I think it's a great process to work around. This is one of the largest installations that we've done. It's a 90 feet long installation for a project. It's a private residence in Baroda. So if you see, the impact of architecture was that for me, I could go larger and larger in terms of scale. My my design team never flinches in terms of proposing even bigger. In fact, I have to scold them sometimes. Ki, please, yaar, kabhi to chota bana do. Like, let's comply with the market expectations someday. This is another light installation from us. That's a parametric bench. It's a custom-made bench for Kohler Experience Center, Bangalore. Why I like this is because this is the first time I did like a design which was parametrically sort of derived. And whenever I've made, if you see any other product in complex geometry out in the market, it's very material intensive. So it's going to have like a plywood or an MDF grid on the inside, and then to structure, there's further structural reinforcements. So one, the weight of the product is really high because how the material tries to construct sort of an object like this. Secondly, I've seen very few cases where people have been able to give like a finished final surface. And I feel a product happens when you have that surface. A product can't just be a grid, really. So for me, the weaving as an idea is where it champions what a product is, the quality and performance of how things go out. But also, when I made this, our structure was actually, it's a metal structure, very lightweight metal structure. Then there's a cane framing on it, and then there's a weaving on it. And honestly, we made a 12 feet by we made a 12 feet by 6 feet piece in this. It could easily be picked up by 2 to 3 people and just moved around. So I think it's interesting that yes, we are talking about unique, innovative designs, but also there's an optimized way of making something. That's another, it's a 10 feet dia, 8 feet height installation, custom made for one of our clients in Hyderabad. This is another project by MuseLab. This is another complex installation that we did for MuseLab, which is, it's a 15 feet tall, 9 feet dia light installation. So if you see my catalog till now, my works till now is actually very monochrome. And for the longest time, we fought with our clients fought with us, saying that, why are you not doing color? Like, how difficult is it to just paint wicker with color? And for the first 5 years, I said, the material is important, the complexity is important to make a point and say that there is potential in the material is important. And we kept saying no to color for the first 5 years of our life. And then last year we said that, like now it's time to take the next step or the next leap. And we said that we're going to play with color. Now, we didn't want to do something as simple as just dyeing a bench red, or, we didn't want to do something very basic. So we said that let our pieces be canvases and then let color be an expression or an emotion. And that's when we came with our color series. So this color series, it's called the Dawn to Dusk series. And for me, like, I love my walks. I love my morning walk or an evening walk. And what I enjoy the most is that one moment of calm, which is a sunset or a sunrise. So I said that, and if you look at a sunset, let's say, it's actually like multitude of colors that sort of construct a sunset. So we bought that in, and this is the series that got us the Red Dot Award, and this is where things became more complex for us, but also interesting. This is one of a recent jhula that we've launched, another flower-inspired installation. Just so these are just my works. I'm just the last note is that like I keep introspecting as to what am I doing and why am I doing, and I feel that the moment you start working in craft, you have to start thinking beyond design. And one of the things that has really helped me in the last 6 years is to say that, how do I bring in a systematic way of working with craft people? What are the processes of engaging with craft people? How do we train how do we train them? How do we give them that sense of stability, that's stability also, and plus economic sustenance, because I don't see craft for them is a means of occupation, which is an everyday for them. For me as a designer, it could be one-off product, but that one-off product which is experimental really doesn't suffice and really doesn't bring in any craft innovation. So for me, this relationship where committing to the material, setting up a workshop, and we are working with people that have been there since our like since the time we started, and we've been able to do complex work, do newer work, pay them better, and establish this relationship. So for me, economic sustenance, it's like the whole idea has gone beyond being a design studio and saying that this has to be an economically sustained system, and how do we grow from one year to the other, and the growth is for myself and for the people who work with us. Secondly, towards organizational setup that facilitates fair working models between craft people and the market. I think we've been able to do that, at least I can't say it for others, but we've been able to do it because my designs are complex. We come at a certain price point, and that sort of translates also into how people get paid with us. So when I started off, one of my most senior weaver, he used to come to me, he used to work, but he's like, what, my kids really look down upon me. And I was like, why? So he's like, the kids, they like, today people think that the idea of a job is to go sit in an air conditioned room to a company and come back. So people used to look down on them, upon them. But today, with the quality, one is pay, but also the quality of work is, suddenly they realize that there's so much value that they have out there in the market when they show that this is the kind of work that they do, that within the family, they've started to be respected. So I think the respect needs to happen, better pay needs to happen, and that better pay can be supported with like better design and better value add outside. Secondly, I think something I've not done yet, but I know that it's my long-term goal, where policy making has to happen to be able to promote the craft sector better and place it in parallel to the modern, to our traditional markets. And lastly, craft goes beyond design. It becomes a lot about people and communities and the region. So there has to be conversations on social impact as well. So certain things like the last 3-4 slides kind of help us in terms of setting up our short-term and long-term goals, where certain things are immediate outputs, certain things are long-term. But the conversation now is no more about just being a design studio and doing that groundbreaking design, but much more than that. So that's it from me. Thank you.